Welcome back to the Absolute Aviation Podcast. I'm your host, Owen, also the owner of the YouTube channel Adventures with Owen. And my co-host here is Solora Norwood, and she is our co-host, also loves aviation. And today we'll be talking about two great subjects. One is the recent heavy turbulence on a Delta flight from Salt Lake City to Amsterdam, if I'm correct. And Ronald Reagan doing a shutdown for July 4th celebrations.
I have one question. Would you rather deal with turbulence or a flight delay?
Ooh, I think turbulence, because I deal with the turbulence a lot, as do many people. What about you?
It kind of depends because a flight delay is like you're trying to go somewhere, but then the delay stops you, especially over 4th of July. I actually think it's pretty smart because this year's the 250th anniversary. So they're like shutting down so nothing bad happens. But so turbulence would be better unless you get into injury.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing before we get into the turbulence, I'd like to touch on is the World Cup is happening this year during July 4th celebrations, and it's going to be a travel nightmare for people trying to travel during July 4th. Do you think their airlines and airports should do something to try to cancel out all the problems that are going to happen because of this?
I don't think there's anything that they could really do because even at the Knicks game, how they won the championship, there was nothing NYPD could really do to stop them. No matter how many people they arrested, they just kept going and kept going.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to compare it to because these are both organizations trying to stop the regular day people who are celebrating for their sports event or other things happening at the time. So what we're going to get into now is the recent heavy turbulence, and the passengers are now suing Delta over it. And there's a lot of controversy. I cannot pronounce that right now, but there's a lot of people saying that it should not be allowed to sue Delta for something that was out of their control, but the passengers are saying the pilots did not take the steps they needed to for flight planning, and they went into the storm on purpose. So, do you have anything you'd like to say on that first before we get into it?
First, I don't believe that they would go into a storm on purpose because they're also on the flight and they don't want anything bad to happen to them. I feel like their mind is that the people on the flight are more important than the pilots because they want them to get safely and hope that they don't get sued. And also their life is also important, so they wouldn't go into a storm willingly.
I agree. Yeah, I don't know how much purpose these passengers are going to be trying to sue for, but personally, if I was one of the lawyers on this case, I would be like, oh, they were not taking the proper steps to prepare for this flight, and they did not go around the storm as they should have, and it was some mistake. So what happened was there's flight DL56, which was scheduled service between Salt Lake City and Amsterdam Airport, and it was on July 30th, 2025, but now the lawsuit is coming in. It was on an A330 that was given to Delta in 2020, which was entered service for Delta in 2023. So it's a relatively new aircraft, so that will push it more against the airplane didn't have an issue, and it was more of the weather. And the emergency responders actually met the aircraft right when it arrived in Minneapolis because it had a diversion. Multiple people were needing medical evaluation and evacuation to the hospital. So do you think they have the right to sue Delta over this, Laura?
I do not believe they have the right because Delta isn't one small airline. It's one of the best airlines in like the nation, and millions of people fly every year. And this turbulence incident is severely uncommon because most flights get on time and safe. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think they'll be going down that path for Delta's law team. But so what happened, according to them, is they said that it was 2.5 minutes of terror as they went through this storm, and that the Delta had the tools and ability to avoid this weather and chose to disregard the warnings. So, the court proceedings and aviation investigators are currently operating independently, and there has been no final legal or investigation conclusions issued. So a Delta spokesperson also said the carrier would not take any comments, which is a little fishy, but is not unusual in this. And they said it was because it was under NTSB investigation, which usually isn't like the real reason, but they usually just don't want to say anything wrong before it comes out. Do you think Delta should make a statement or no?
I think Delta should make a statement because they don't want to get sued and lose a lot of money. So they might as well make a statement of like why they maybe accidentally went to the storm.
Yeah. One thing I'd like to bring up is these whether or not the seatbelt was on, I think will play a huge role because none of the people who did get actually injured by this had their seatbelt on. None of them. So they all had their seatbelt off. So whether or not the seatbelt sign was on is going to be a huge player in this lawsuit. Because if the seatbelt sign was on, they were going against what the pilots had said to do, which is actually illegal. So there's just going to be a lot around this. Do you think if the seatbelt sign was on, there should be no case at all?
100%. If the seatbelt sign was on, you're breaking a law by not listening to the pilot, and you practically got yourself in danger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's almost like a, the things that you sign when you're going to do something dangerous and the company has no liability. So I think that's almost the same thing here. But one more thing is they say to keep your seatbelt on at all times, even when the seatbelt sign is off. Now, this is a little more like, because it's not directly the seatbelt sign being on. So do you think it's the same case even if the seatbelt sign was off?
If the seatbelt sign was off, I don't think it would be the same case because it's not as important as if they're breaking a law because they didn't explicitly show that your seatbelts were supposed to be on.
Yeah. I agree with that. So I think what we are going to do now is head over to what is happening in Washington Ronald Reagan International. So this is the main airport in Washington, D.C., and supposedly this is where most of the celebrations will be happening. So it's temporarily suspending all of the flights on one of the busiest day of the year. Of course, 4th of July is very busy. So it is going to definitely make it a lot harder for people to travel. So do you think it was worth it saying nobody can travel here on July 4th and they can do more celebrations? Or do you think they should have just kept it open and made all of the celebrations stay clear of the flight path of these aircraft landing? What do you think?
I believe it's worth a shot to at least try, but I don't think that they're just not going to travel there. I think they'll find a way to get there.
Yeah, I agree. And again, it would be very dangerous and not be a great thing if you did end up having a accident on July 4th because the proper steps were not taken to close the airspace. So, all of the airspace above the airport will be closed, and this is again the nearest airport to Washington, D.C., which is why they're closing this one and not the others. So there are other options for people to go, but it's not the most foolproof plan going to another airport, and it's going to be very congested. So it's going to be a full ground stop, and so no airplanes will be coming in or going out. And do you think this is the right decision? And do you think this is going to get a lot of backlash?
I believe this will get a lot of backlash because there's a chance that people already had flights booked and like have family to see and they just won't be able to do it.
Yeah, I agree. So their main reason for this is the annual July 4th fireworks display over Washington, D.C. always causes a closure of the airspace. But because this is going to be a larger one, 250th anniversary, there's going to be
Semi-quincentennial.
Yep, semi-quincentennial. There's going to be massive celebrations in Washington, D.C., in addition to the annual fireworks show. So what used to be about a 2-hour stop in the air for all of this is going to be even bigger. They're going to have tons of firework displays, a parade, political rally, and actually IndyCar race. So there's just going to be a lot of stuff happening, and it's going to be difficult for everybody. And one thing I will say is this is going to create a lot of traffic of people trying to get to all the different modes of transportation to get out of Washington, D.C. and try to get where they're going. So do you think this is going to eventually just end up making the whole city like a war zone?
Yes, because a delay isn't just local. It can affect flights across the whole entire country, and that can grow bigger into bigger problems. By just doing this, they're messing up a lot of people's schedules.
Yeah, I agree. So, it's just going to be most of the aircraft. There's a few apparently that are going to get in and out, and that's about it. There's one more thing I do want to touch on, and it is the new Air Force One. So I'm going to pull up a photo here. So this is the new Air Force One, and it was gifted by Qatar, as many of you do know. So it has gone from the white, blue, and gold lining of the old Air Force One, very prominent, very known, and it is now an American flag on a mostly white aircraft with a dark blue bottom, red lining, and gold lining. It could also be seen as yellow and almost an American flag. So again, it is a 747 that is gifted from the Qatar Air Force, and so they very quickly actually got this aircraft to be capable of Air Force One. Do you think this is a safe decision here? Because a lot of the controversy is that it's not safe for the president to fly on, especially on these big days like July 4th.
I do think it's not as safe because airspace is really hard to like travel on, especially with the president. I think he might get assassinated, allegedly though.
Yeah, I do think it might be a little dangerous. So the first showcase of this new aircraft is supposedly going to be July 4th, and they're going to have a huge flyover of all these different military aircraft, including the new Air Force One, and it should be the first time that the public gets to see the aircraft fly. If not, it might be the day before July 3rd, and apparently it might be flying near Mount Rushmore. So this will be very cool. One thing we have already seen is quite a big flyover for another birthday celebration of America. And it was a few days ago, and it also had a military flyover. And we saw 2 B-2s and plenty of F-18s, F-16s, stuff like that. And we saw them fly over. So do you think that, how much bigger do you think this one will be?
I think it's going to be much bigger so that there's more places to hide or just kind of just sit around in. Mm-hmm. Wow, this thing does look pretty good.
The new Air Force One?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I do like it. The color scheme looks very nice. So I think we're going to wrap up this podcast episode. It's going to be a little shorter. We thank you all for watching. If you're watching here on YouTube, please subscribe. And this video is actually sponsored by airmodels.net. You can find the link in the description. They've got some great airplane models.